If our CUNY representatives are here, please come on down. That's true. Good morning, and thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. I'm going to briefly introduce each of you, and then if you would, as you're speaking, please introduce yourselves just for the benefit of the audience and those who are watching remotely. We are joined today from the City University of New York panelists, including Mohamed Attalla, who is the Vice Chancellor for Facilities Planning, Construction, and Management, Tria Case, the University Executive Director for Sustainability and Energy Conservation, Facilities Planning, Construction, and Management, and Dimitros Katias, please correct me, I apologize, Director of Engineering and Chief Engineer of Facilities Planning, Construction, and Management. Please, whoever is kicking us off, Mohamed, would that be you? Okay, Mr. Attalla, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Our chair. Okay. Good morning, Committee Chair Patricia Hay and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on CUNY's facilities, capital, and sustainability, and thank you for your support over the years. My name is Mohamed Attalla, and I am the Vice Chancellor of Facility Planning, Construction, and Management. At CUNY, our focus has been to improve our processes for capital work and enhance our capacity to design, construct, and maintain the facilities that CUNY needs to support its mission of providing the highest level of education for all students, no matter their background or where they came from. CUNY's facilities team work to align our efforts to bring all of our facilities to a state of good repair with our commitment to meet New York State sustainability goals, including the Governor's Executive Order 22, as well as the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. To meet the needs of a system of the size of CUNY manages physical assets of approximately 26.9 million square feet throughout all 5 boroughs. In 2023, the university initiated a comprehensive facilities assessment to determine the condition of all of its assets. Currently, about 25% of the university's facilities' vital components are in a state of good repair. However, our goal is to increase that to 55% by 2030. To meet our goals, we collaborate with campus leadership to identify priority projects by replacing building systems that have reached their useful life with modernized systems that also help reduce carbon footprint. Those identified priority projects are included in our annual capital request, which sets forth our collective effort to modernize our campuses to ensure that they support academic excellence, foster a dynamic learning environment, accommodate future growth, and support evolving novel educational pedagogies. While over the last 2 years, CUNY has completed about 73 projects totaling almost $760 million across our campuses, continued funding is critical to meet our goals. For senior colleges, our building infrastructure upgrade probably needs about $400 million per year. The same effort for community colleges would require about an additional investment of approximately $200 million per year. At our efforts towards energy conservation, CUNY's annual needs are estimated to be about $170 million per year for senior colleges and an additional $90 million per year for community colleges. In fiscal year 24-25 enacted budget, CUNY received $481 million in support from the New York State. Of that funding, CUNY allocated $392 million for senior colleges building infrastructure and program upgrades, and $32 million for IT infrastructure and technology. Of the $392 million targeting senior colleges, almost $348 is dedicated to enhancing the state of good repair, which also improves the social, environmental, and economic sustainability of the colleges. This includes work such as critical infrastructure needs, ensuring safety and regulatory compliances, fire alarms, ADA accessibility, HVAC systems, modernizing technology, energy efficiency, enhanced wayfinding, optimizing space utilization, the upgrading of classrooms, labs, and communal areas. To meet the sustainability goals of Governor's Executive Order 22, CUNY achieved a 20% energy use reduction from its 2015 baseline with over 131 projects in our current New York State Build Smart pipeline. We are currently analyzing an additional 80 projects which would allow us to meet the 2025 target of a 35% reduction in energy use as outlined in the executive order. CUNY developed an energy master plan that is focused on achieving the overall Build Smart goals. Most of its projects fall into 4 areas: building envelope, building automation system, HVAC upgrade, and lighting. About $190 million in new projects of our capital investment for this fiscal year will have a material impact on improving our carbon footprint. CUNY is also creating new innovative renewable energy systems to relieve the grid. For example, a prototype combination of a solar panel array, a battery energy storage system, and electric vehicle chargers are being deployed, which additionally provide interactive and integrated educational experience. Our efforts to meet Governor's Executive Order 22 goals also include waste diversion and transition to electrical vehicles. CUNY has a current waste diversion rate of 39%, with a 29 goal of 50%. By the end of 2023, 12% of CUNY's light-duty vehicles fleet was zero-emission vehicles. All CUNY campuses have submitted fleet conversion plans with a focus primarily on deploying infrastructure through 2023, such as purchasing electrical charger, installing charging stations, and working with utility companies for increased availability of power within the grid. At this nation's largest urban university, we take our responsibility of environmental stewardship seriously. We know that higher education plays a key role in shaping a sustainable and safe society. Assembly member, I understand that this is your last hearing as the chair of the Higher Education Committee. We thank you for your unwavering support and commitment to higher education. In addition, we look forward to working with you in the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a bittersweet reminder that it's my last hearing. So I thank you. And believe me, we are extraordinarily proud of the work this committee has done, and the legislature as a whole, led in this body by the Speaker. We're very proud of the investments that have been made, record-setting investments in capital, which is part of what this hearing is about, to lay the groundwork for future years, but also incredibly proud of the operating dollars that we've been able to secure the increases these last few years. And with that, I'll start with just a couple of questions and then turn to my colleagues. You mentioned a number of the needs, and I'll ask the same question I asked of our last panel. How much of your capital needs are addressed through either the City of New York or from the federal government? We've read a lot about the Inflation Reduction Act and related programs coming out of COVID, whether they were for energy or energy upgrades or related investments. Is there anything that you are able to turn to at the federal government and anything you see there, or is it really a state reliance for your capital investments?
The majority of our funding and our reliance is really on the state capital support, and also the City of New York provide some capital support for the community colleges. And that is the extent of the bulk of our capital planning is relying on these funds.
The community college, I know there, and I'm not sure if it was Hostas or one that has been waiting on a nursing and related health, allied health investments. I don't have it in front of me now, but I know they've been, sorry?
Ostos Community College.
It is, okay, it is Ostos. Any update on that? Because I think our funding was tied up waiting on the city to make its investment first. Do we have any updates on whether we've seen an investment from the city?
We're still working with our colleagues in the city for this building. It's the Allied Health Profession building for Ostos. It has been in our capital plan for a few years as one of our priorities, and it's also included in our summarized sheets for the large building additions for for many years. We continue to work with our colleagues in the city to find ways to be able to find the city share of this building, but it is not finalized yet.
Okay. At a time when we've have talked extensively about the healthcare worker shortages that we face throughout this state, let alone throughout the country, it is unfortunate that in this instance, the fact that the facility is really holding up enrollments in critical workforce, where we have critical workforce needs in healthcare. So thank you. You mentioned at the beginning of your testimony that 25%, only 25% of your buildings are in good repair. Do you have a tiered way? And those, we spoke a lot just with the last panel about those that might be in more a dire situation or at risk of failure, whether it's the energy systems or other serious structural needs. What percent would you put those at?
We do have our system to have those priorities, and I want to say that while our certain building components, they reach their end of life and they need replacements, however, we make sure that it is not near failure or it won't fail, and the facilities are operating safely, and those components will continue to operate until such time when they are replaced. However, we do prioritize based on the case. To answer your question specifically, I would say it's about 10 to 15% of the systems that would say that they need imminent replacement.
Have critical investment needs? Is that what I heard you say?
I said, yeah, they need replacement, and we do prioritize those every year when we get the appropriation, the state appropriation. We make sure that we prioritize those systems to be replaced.
Okay. SUNY also mentioned that they had about $8.9 billion backlog in capital investment needs. Do you have a similar statistic? And if you said it, I'm sorry if I missed it.
It's no, it was not mentioned in the testimony.
Sorry?
It is not mentioned in the testimony.
Not. Okay,
so it's the term we use, like our facilities professionals in North America, they use the term deferred maintenance backlog.
What? I'm sorry?
Deferred maintenance backlog. Yeah, so that deferred maintenance, this number is 6.9 billion estimated at. And those numbers are best estimates based on observations of the performance of the different building components. It is not a hard number, but that's an estimate based on visual observation.
And I was asked, it was at 6.9 billion?
Billion was a B.
It was a billion. Yep, we heard it right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So very similar, serious needs. Okay. Glad we made a dent in it last year, but clearly only a dent. Okay. With that, I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Did you have a question, Mr. Gray?
Just a quick question here. Thank you very much for being here today. So, so I'm looking at your senior campuses need is this just next year? You're looking for 400 million for infrastructure improvements and then 200 for your community colleges?
It's our estimate. This is our estimate for over the next 5 years. So every year we submit our 5-year capital plan to the state. So this is our estimate that we will be submitting 400 million for 5 years, totaling $2 billion.
And then in addition to that, you need for energy conservation 170 million and 90 million.
That's correct. That's our estimate.
Still over 5 years, or is that
5 years?
Okay. And do you know after that investment, is there a savings attached to that, or is this strictly? And what are we looking at here in terms of for that? 260 million.
When we develop those numbers, we're looking at the how we would comply with Executive Order 22 and Local Law 97. So we have those local laws and acts that we need to comply with. So the target is the reduction of energy and achieving those goals which goes to 35, 50% reduction from the baseline. So these are the estimated group of projects that we've developed in order to achieve this level of sustainability and the reduction of the carbon footprint of the campuses. So in order to achieve these goals, we need to undertake certain initiatives and certain projects to be implemented, which we mentioned some of those examples of projects that help reducing the carbon footprint for the university. And then we estimate the dollar value for those projects and those initiatives in order to be implemented over the 5-year plan. And this is how we come up with those numbers.
Okay, so in SUNY was talking about 30% of their usage is electricity, but it represents 70% of their cost. And so you're transitioning to all electricity, essentially?
Well, essentially, this is our electrification is a long-term plan, and this is as we mentioned in the testimony that we'll need a further discussion with the utility company and ensure that the grid actually have the capacity and have the support in order to electrify our system. Electrifying a boiler or moving from a gas boiler to electrical boiler, it's a big jump on the electrical usage. So it has a relationship to the grid. So our effort was to bring more efficiency components at this point, and also look for the renewable aspects of providing electricity, looking for solar, looking at the electrical charger deployment. And this is why we're doing this prototype projects, and if successful, we would implement it. It's a unique type of project that we're doing it in consultation and collaboration with our researchers in the university to deploy that. So this is one avenue we're looking at, and also looking at opportunities for geothermal, which we did not really tackle strongly at this point, but this is one of our efforts as well.
Okay, and do you have an idea, projection of what that's going to do your operating cost?
We didn't really get to calculate this piece, so we'll share that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with Mr. McDonald.
Thank you for being here, number one. Number two, earlier, remember Faye had asked about, federal or local funding. You indicated the city contributes something. Is that something a fixed percentage, or is that something that, depending on the occasion, or is it something that's consistent funding that you can plan for?
It is not a fixed amount. Same to the state, same to the state side. So it is not a fixed amount. So the city looks at the available budget and the available funds, and we submit requests, and based on the discussions and the hearing we go through, then the city will decide an amount. And on the city side, the approval and the commitment to plan usually include project by project. So it's a different setup.
Okay, yeah. It's groveling one way or the other, right? You're trying to get the funds. I get it. The other thing, and this is just an observation, but you mentioned about 12% of CUNY's light duty vehicle fleet was zero emission vehicles. In the upstate area, we've been having a lot of conversations about heavy duty vehicles. I don't know if you even have them in your fleet, number one, if you do, yes or no. And then if you do, I know there's a lot of concerns about charging for those heavier duty vehicles. Is that a concern that CUNY is wrestling with?
Yeah, our focus on the light duty. CUNY doesn't own a larger inventory of heavy duty vehicles. This is why the focus on the light duty vehicles at this point, and 12%, I believe at this point, is a good percentage. And our work now is how we develop the infrastructure in order to move into the electrical vehicle. As we know, electrical vehicles will need electrical charger, and that's again linked to the grid and the grid capacity to be able to develop those electrical chargers. So we are working on developing the plans of how we do that. But in the same time, also, we are proceeding with some pilot projects in certain campuses to have this installed and study and analyze how it will work.
In all of our joint excitement about moving towards electric vehicles and zero emission, which is important and we all support, I think you would agree that the challenge is really making sure the proper infrastructure is in place, and that's more costly than what people, I think, give it credit for. That's just a statement. You don't need to respond to that.
That's
Thank
correct,
you.
yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Ickes?
Thank you, and thank you for being here. And Mr. McDonald led right into it because I'm big on EVs. I believe that your campuses are the absolute excellent place to have EVs. One of the things that we always hear, the drawback about EVs is the distance that they can travel, and certainly being within the confines of the city, you know, you shouldn't really run into that problem. However, I do want to mention a couple of things. In your report, you talked about charging, and we heard it again, and so on like that. But for EVs really to be efficient, they have to be garaged also. If we leave these cars outside year-round, they will lose their efficiency. And so I just want to add that kind of to, besides the charging stations and so on like that, as something that for viability, we should be taking a look at also for you, you know, and help you achieve that. I love the word conservation. I think all of your savings is going to come from conservation. Certainly if we put geothermal, solar, whatever, into a very inefficient building, we're not going to save anything really. And so I like that you use that term in answering the question, and I hope it's really up there at the top of your list. The final thing is, have you talked with, I'm assuming it'd be NYSEG, about the availability of power? And I say this simply for one reason. We have the Champlain-Hudson power line ripped right through the center of my district, going down to New York City. We do not and will not be able to take any of that power. So all of that power will be supplied to New York City. And have they told you that they will have the power to support these projects that you plan on doing?
Are you able to answer this? Say your name.
There we go. Hi, Tria Case. Yeah. Tria Case, University Director of Sustainability. Okay, I'll put my outside voice on. So I think the key for us, as the Vice Chancellor mentioned, is about the infrastructure to our campuses. So it isn't just about getting to the grid, but the wires, if you will, that come to our campuses. So a big effort on our part will be making sure that we have the infrastructure coming to each campus in the locations where we need to get those EV chargers.
I appreciate that. So the question still stands. Have you had any discussions, and I don't know if it's NYSEG or some other power company, but have you had any discussions to date with these companies or this company to determine if they're going to help support you? I mean, you can have wonderful ideas, great ideas about electrification and so on like that, but if you're not being supported by the power companies, we're not going to have success.
Con Ed has a program where we can sit down with them and they'll work with us to look at the infrastructure around our campuses. So that is our next step, actually, to work with them.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Assemblywoman Joanne Simon? Yes, please.
So thank you very much for your testimony. And my colleagues have already started asking my vehicle fleet questions. So thank you very much for handling that. You know, I am concerned about the issue that Mr. Ickes raised with regard to garaging, because, you know, garaging is something that we have very little of in New York City. And it is a big complaint of mine that the city has done nothing to increase the availability of off-street parking. Clearly when it comes to EVs, that's going to be a very big issue, right? So I'm curious about your conversations with the city, with perhaps DEP and DOT with regard to those kinds of issues going forward. And so maybe you can answer that question, and then I have a couple of follow-ups.
Yeah, as we mentioned, we are in the very initial stages in this regard. And as we mentioned, a very crucial, I think the point is very well taken. is electrical vehicles need a lot of studies and a lot of infrastructure to be done on the chargers themselves, the lines, availability on the grid. All of those are very comprehensive analysis. And also the response to them, it differs. I mean, the City University of New York is all 5 boroughs. So the solution for Staten Island is different than Brooklyn, Queens, Midtown, Manhattan, Bronx. So those very detailed discussions will need to be still to be taken. It's not done yet, but before we proceed with formulating any plans or having any implementation, those discussions about the availability of those infrastructure, how they will be implemented, how they will be planned, how they will be funded, will need to be take place.
Now, you also mentioned solar, and somebody raised geothermal, but I didn't hear that in your testimony. If I missed it, I apologize. But I'm very curious about the efforts that CUNY may be making with regard to geothermal energy, which is going to be clean. And, you know, we have a lot of hot air in New York City, and certainly we have it underground. And it seems to me it's a very effective way of increasing energy, because as you're doing this, you know, this issue of computing, you're not going to have data farms kind of thing, but you have a lot of computing needs, and will continue to have a lot of computing needs, and they can suck a lot of energy out of your grid.
Absolutely. Geothermal is one of the major, very important renewable energy sources. At CUNY, we didn't do much of it yet, but currently we are engaged under the Decarbonization Leadership Program in 2 major studies on 2 of our major campuses to implement geothermal fields at these 2 campuses as a start of our efforts. So this is one of our current priorities in our energy master plan, is to proceed with this with these 2.
And you know, right now, Con Ed is engaged with getting electricity from offshore wind, which is a big effort that's going on right now. There's one of those being systems being put in my district, and it's not built yet. But to what extent might CUNY be able to avail itself of the energy that is generated from offshore wind? Particularly, I'm thinking like Kingsborough is right there. You know, you got your own wind right there. Yeah. It's out in the harbor. So I'm just curious whether you guys are in that mix.
This is part of our studies as well, to see how we can CUNY benefit from wind energy as a source of renewable energy. Right now, what the study in terms of renewable that we've done is we did a comprehensive analysis in solar, as we mentioned, and CUNY currently have potential for about 19 megawatt of solar use. And we're working on some of these implementations. And our current efforts of the assessment is exactly what we mentioned around like geothermal and wind, tapping into those renewable sources to implement at CUNY.
And one other question is, when you're looking at infrastructure and capital, one of the things that is a challenge in New York City is obviously accessibility from a disability, wheelchair accessibility point of view, and other aspects of physical accessibility. And a lot of the CUNY campuses are old. Some of them have newer buildings, but a lot of them are old. How is that progressing? And what are your capital needs that would really be the kind of things that would be directly related to accessibility, disability access?
That's a very good point. Thank you very much. And it's part of our capital priorities and capital distribution for the appropriation that we receive every year. We make sure that we include part of it to improving accessibility and ADA, as we mentioned in the testimony. So that will include things such as improving our vertical elevating devices, elevators, escalators, creating ramps in buildings that you don't have ramps for accessibility, including accessible restrooms at certain floors in our buildings. So Right now, the CUNY buildings are compliant with ADA accessibility because most of them are grandfathered. However, we are not relying on the fact that they are grandfathered by code. We understand that there is need and there is equity issue here when we have a building that is not accessible. So we make sure to identify those pieces, and every year we ensure that our capital fund have distributed to address a good part of that.
Okay. And excuse me, I'm also curious about communication systems access, which is also technically, I guess, a capital need, like loop systems for assistive listening devices. How well are CUNY buildings equipped for people having who have difficulty with hearing, having assistive listening devices so that they can hear what's going on and connect up through their hearing aids, which is going to be a bigger issue with regard to an aging faculty as well.
Yeah, in some of our buildings, this is like dealt with in ad hoc when the need is identified. So when there is a need, there will be an investment in the technology. And last year, we invested about $90 million in improving our technology and classroom technologies and also the infrastructure of communication and network. And when an event such what described is, we deal with the academic community in the campuses in order to do the necessary upgrades to deal with that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Assemblymember Chandler Waterman, please.
It's always tricky with the button. I want to thank Chair again and my colleagues, and thank you for your testimony. I have the privilege of having 4 children, one in SUNY, one in CUNY, one in private school, so I have all those aspects. And what I do know is that they have big voices, right? And they ask a lot of questions, and they're in the facility. So what I want to know when it comes, we understand about the proper infrastructure, want to make sure it's conservation, want to make sure it's sustainability, equity, and we have a variety, especially I'm thinking in a city where we have like little to no space, as my colleague mentioned, when it comes to garaging or, having vehicles, and then the ADA compliance that was discussed just now, and just the facilities in general. Where is it that we capture the voices of the students, right? And how they see they needed support and what they would like the campus to look like and what ideas do they have to implement into what plans may be arising. Because sometimes we look at it one way, we know what's good, we know we say this is all good, but how is voices like that from those in the school, the students, also implemented into the ideas?
Yeah, well, students really are our primary customers and our primary focus. And as we always say, our existence as administrators in the community system in order to serve those students. So really their voices and their needs are incorporated in the main fabric of how we do our business. So I can give examples from the highest levels to the lowest levels. As you know, that the head of the student government is a trustee on the board of governors. And this is the highest level in decision making in the university. When we have the head of the student government is a trustee member of the board of governors of the university. In addition to that, students also and student representative sits on many of the government subcommittees. The facility subcommittee would have a student member attend and serves. In addition to that, we have different bodies that involve students in making their voices. And for example, the Campus Sustainability Council and the University Sustainability Council that is headed by my colleague Tria Case, Executive Director of Sustainability. And in the University Sustainability Council, students are very well represented there. And I should say and mention now is we are really fortunate as a higher education institution in the side of sustainability and energy conservation that we have our customer base is the students, because almost 100% of them are really convinced of the need of energy conservation and sustainability to maintain our building, our assets and community, and the planet for the future. So that helps us a lot to formulate and implement many of our sustainability and energy conservation efforts in the institution. Maybe many of our other colleagues who do not work really for a higher education institution, they might have some difficulty to implement those initiatives. But working with the students in the ground and getting their feedback and their ideas, and for the most part, they also champion actually the implementation of many of our sustainability efforts. So when we speak about waste diversion, for example, and when we speak about elimination of single-use plastic, when we speak about reducing our energy consumption in the summer during the demand response days, students are an integral part of the implementation of this work, and they work with us in a leadership role to be able to implement those, and we listen to them to a large extent and their needs to move with our plans.
Oh, thank you so much for that, because that's very important to make sure assessments are happening, making sure there's town hall types conversations to make sure that their voice is included. So thank you so much for explaining that to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. So thank you. Thank you for making the effort to join us and to convey what are very serious and growing needs. No other questions. So thank you again. Really appreciate the effort and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. All the best for the holidays. And with that, we're going to move to Tom Schnur, who is the Director of Government Affairs for the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities.